Welcome to Taupo, the event capital of the North Island. There is so much to do here. You can bungee jump, you can sit in cafes, and most importantly, you can see some really great motorsport, like Formula Challenge.
Round one for the Rico Formula Challenge for 2005 at a beautiful Taupo Raceway, and heading out of the first corner, race number one, Mark Russ off the pole, and alongside him, Palmerston North's Jono Lester. Our Australian visitor, Damien Asselin, back there in the third position. Mark Russ in the drive right 22 through the kink, leading early from Jono Lester. Damien Asselin back there in that third position. It's a shot of the DQH Holmes car of Damien Asselin, getting some experience in New Zealand with the Wings and Slicks cars, a karting expert from Australia, just a youngster at 15 years of age. Jono Lester the first to pit. Mark Russ staying out on track, and the Australian with a pretty ordinary pit stop, so that's going to drop him back down behind Jono Lester and Mark Russ, who had a much better pit stop here. So Jono Lester under all sorts of pressure from the Australian. Down towards the end of the first race, Mark Russ with his head down, putting in some quick laps at the end of the race. Damien Asselin in position.
Had to push pretty hard there. Thought Jono and Damien were going to come up, so just waited for those guys to do their pit stop, and then I came in the lap after and just managed to get out in front of them, so I was pretty happy and just cruised to the finish.
The second race for the first round, lining up behind the course car. And Jono Lester and Damien Asselin already out in front for the second race. No sign of the first race winner, Mark Russ. There's Jono Lester, the compulsory pit stop for the second race. Good, clean stop on the gas out of the pit chute at Taupo. Mark Russ coming in here. Held up in the early laps and stalling in the pits here. So a tough race for the first race winner, Mark Russ. Here's the Australian, Damien Asselin, car number 10. Bit of a tardy stop again here for the young Australian. And like the first round, he was the last of the leaders to pit. Genian Holmes car there going through the S's. Rico car, Craig Loveridge there, just ahead of Jono Lester here, coming through the S's. Mark Russ second, Damien Asselin third. So that slow pit stop held up the Australian. Jono Lester taking the win in round number 2, ahead of Mark Russ and Damien Asselin.
The car changed for the worse towards the end. I had to ease up a bit at the end. We had a few brake problems, but I'd made the gap. Mark, I hear, stalled in pit lane, which gave me a bit of a buffer again.
The three young guns on the podium for the first round, Jono Lester, Mark Russ and Damien Asselin. Here's the points after the first rounds. Mark Russ with the points lead on 87.
Formula Challenge has been operating out of the Taupo racetrack for as long as I can remember, but now it's moving to a new home because the Taupo racetrack just got a whole lot bigger. So given that this racetrack is going to make Taupo a bit of a motorsport mecca, are you hoping to attract, people from the rest of the North Island in our own country?
Oh, I think so, and also around the world as well. I mean, they're looking at some big international events coming here as well. And Taupo being a tourist town, I mean, it's got all the facilities in the town itself, and so we can cater for, international as well as local people. So it's going to be huge.
But what's it going to mean for Formula Challenge and for the motorsport experience?
Well, this is something that we've all been waiting for such a long time now, but what it means is that we're going to have an international circuit right on our doorstep. Formula Challenge can operate out in the industrial park, which is something unique in New Zealand, and so we can just lift up the roller door out to the circuit. People can come, we can do smaller groups, bigger groups. It's just going to be fantastic for the whole town.
It was another cool, fine day for the second round, with the track still damp in places for qualifying. Impressive in qualifying was the first round winner, Mark Russ. You can see here leading the points on 87 ahead of Jono Lester on 85, the Australian Damien Silent on 80 points. The field lining up for the first heat. Mark Russ off the pole. Jono Lester from 2. Mark Russ, former New Zealand karting champion. Big battle here between Jono Lester and Damien Silent. And I think these three are pretty much going to feature throughout the series. Down out of the hairpin at Taupo, there's the Rico car of Craig Loveridge battling with the Genian Holmes car. Into the pits goes the leader, Mark Russ. Damien Silent staying out on track, trying to get that one quick lap in, with Mark Russ and Jono Lester both pitting ahead of him. Mark Russ back out on track here. Here's the Australian again. Again struggling getting out of the pits at Taupo, so that will cost him some track time. And he is still behind Jono Lester in that battle for second and third. Mark Russ, the leader. Race 1, round 2, the 2005 Rico Formula Challenge. And Damien Silent got by Jono Lester on the last lap. Mark Russ taking out the win. Silent second, Jono Lester third.
I pretty much took my own lines. That Jono and Damien were sort of behind and battling, so they slowed each other down, and I just sort of went ahead and raced my own race.
In the reverse grid, second race for the second round, race 4 of the championship. In the early laps, we lost the points leader, Mark Russ. He had a spin. Unfortunately, did some gear linkage damage that ended his race. Jono Lester very aggressive through traffic. He was the first of the 4 equal first.
Sideline on New Zealand Motorsport News, and New Plymouth's Brendan Rowlands was at the World Stock Car Finals last weekend at Northampton. Next year's Rally New Zealand will be from November 10 to 12, and there are more big changes planned for 07 and 08. Richard Mason, Gary Cowan, Dave Strong, Brett Martin and Leanne Barnes, all class winners in the New Zealand Rally Championships. And the 2 Team Kiwi Racing V8s this year will be driven by Gene Rollinson and Jason Leifting. Rollinson, a former winner of the Formula Challenge, as we return to the 2005 event.
Now, I've been told that these things are easy to drive, but hard to drive fast. So I'm going to go out there and nail it. That was fantastic. Extremely exhilarating. I loved it. Wow.
A fine spring day, albeit a cold northeasterly wind blowing. The big news in qualifying was Damien Silent, who claimed his first pole position of the series, a 42 flat for Mark Russ. Jono Lester back in third on a 43.56. Problems there for the Rico car of Craig Loveridge. That brings out the yellows, with Mark Russ leading, Damien Silent second, Jono Lester third. Rico car having its pit stop. Good pit stop acceleration out of the pits there. Oh, a collision in the pits. Mark Russ and Jono Lester have made contact. Jono Lester missing a front wing. Mark Russ, all he has done, I believe, is bent a front rim. So very, very lucky he's able to continue. Jono Lester handicapped without that front wing. Under pressure here from Ian Guilford. So that incident costing Jono Lester a couple of positions at least. Mark Russ taking another win ahead of Damien Silent. Mike Thompson holding on for third ahead of Jono Lester.
Nearly had a bit of a disaster in the pits. Actually, Jono came in behind me and I didn't see him, and clipped my wheel and it bent the rim, and it's bent his nose cone. So we're lucky the wheel didn't come off the rim, so it was lucky to get to the finish.
Race 2 for the third round, 14 laps, reverse grid. Craig Loveridge and Charles Dawson off the front row. Keep an eye on Jono Lester here. He's got the advantage of being a couple of spots up on first and second in the first race. Silent and Mark Russ, and already putting some pressure here on Craig Loveridge in the Rico car is Jono Lester. Lester now, his compulsory pit stop, gets on the gas early. That's a good clean stop for the youngster out of Palmerston North. Long established name in New Zealand motor racing, the Lester family out of Manfield, of course. Grandfather Robbie and his dad Richard. There's the pit stop there for the 05. Jono Lester The AC Taupo, number 11, a big lead down through the first turn, and Jono Lester would take the win in race 2 for the third round ahead of the Australian Damien Asilat. Mark Russ third.
The Rico Formula Challenge 2005 Winter Series is coming down to the wire. Today is the grand final, and we've got 3 main contenders: Mark Russ, Jono Lester and Damien Asilat. And at the end of today, one of those guys is going to be standing right here with this in his hot little hand, and more importantly, he is going to be the champion.
So it's very, very close going into the final round of the 2005 Rico Formula Challenge Winter Series. Damien Asilat leading on 249, just 1 point ahead of Mark Russ on 248.
Race day in Taupo, and what a contrast in weather from yesterday. We've got puddles on the track, and we really don't know what's going to happen at this point. Even with the wet weather tyres, the drivers are feeling pretty nervous about whether this race meet's going to go ahead. I don't know what this is going to be doing to the boys' confidence.
It's a bit wet out there, really, so I think no one's going to be expecting too many surprises or anything. But yeah, I think the slowest man might be the fastest man today, I think, with the wet.
Now, the drivers have been saying that conditions are not exactly what they hoped for.
No, look, it's going to be lots of spray around and very hard to keep these things. These things will turn around on a straight line, so it's very much about nursing and getting it home rather than being on the grass and on the wall.
Heart starts beating, adrenaline starts pumping.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. Look, I'm looking forward to it. It's something that really gets my heart going, and there's moments in the races that I will remember for the rest of my life. So it's a great experience.
Now, most people think motorsport is all about the car, but as a sports psychologist, I can tell you that 80% of any good performance comes down to this. And today, I really want to find out what's going on in these guys' heads, what makes them tick. Now, we've got Mark Russ, turning 19 soon. He's under a lot of pressure. He's got 2 15-year-olds snapping at his heels. He's a winner of the Speed Sports Scholarship, and he's doing really well today. He comes in with a bit of an edge. But he's got a whole lot of expectation placed on his shoulders. So I guess that's making him feel like he really has to produce the goods.
It's completely different when it starts to rain. I mean, you got to be easy on the throttle, easy on the brakes, and makes it a lot harder to try and come, and especially for that second race, it's double points as well. So trying to come through from the back and not make a mistake and win a championship is not easy as well. So it's going to be hard.
Now, the second of the trio under pressure here today is Jono Lester. He's been immersed in motorsport from a very early age, what with his father and his granddad being ex-drivers. But whether that gives him the support that he needs or places extra expectation on him is the big question.
Well, I feel pretty good. I had a good sleep last night and just thought about went around the track in my sleep, as you do, and just got to do the job today.
So what about the conditions? They're not exactly what we'd all hoped for.
It does mean we'll be going slow, of course, because we won't be able to push as hard as we want to normally. And as I said, it's just about being patient and keeping the car on the track and hoping someone else goes off and it helps me out of it.
Are you hoping that someone else makes some mistakes, Jono?
No, of course not. I wouldn't say that. No, that's how motorsport is, and if it could be me. You never know. That's just how it goes.
The third member of the Type 3 is Damien Asilat, and he comes to us from Australia's beautiful Sunshine Coast. Now, he's come over here to get some experience because in Australia, he's too young to race. Perhaps he's in the best headspace because while he's providing the other 2 contenders with some serious competition, he doesn't really have a lot to prove.
I've come over here to get the extra experience before I can get a licence back home.
Wow, well, you're going into it today with a bit of an edge and feeling quite confident about that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope to keep it. I reckon I can do this. I can win.
So onto the qualifying, and unfortunately it was wet, but it is the same for all of the drivers. Beautiful in-car shots here from the Rico car of Craig Loveridge down into turn 1. Qualifying very, very important here for the final round, with points carrying over for the fastest qualifier and down through the order. And that could prove very pivotal in the championship points going into the races. Oh, big moment there for one of the cars. Here's the Rico car of Craig Loveridge in very, very difficult conditions. Here's Mike Thompson working his way through the S's ahead of Ian Guilford. 2 cars in the top 6 in the championship overall. Just see how much water there is out there on the track, and you'd see how hard Mark Russ is trying with a spin. At the moment, he has got the quickest position, and again, trying very, very hard with another spin out of the hairpin.
Well, here in Taupo today, the weather has beaten us. The Rico Formula Challenge 2005 Winter Series has been called to a halt. The stewards have said that there's too much standing water on the track, as you can see, and it's far too dangerous to race. But we do have a winner.
And in the end, it was the qualifying that was the difference in the championship. 18-year-old Mark Russ taking out the overall series honours for 2005 ahead of Damien Asilat and Jono Lester. Russ with the win on 268 ahead of Asilat, 267. Jono Lester on 259. Equal fourth, Mike Thompson and Ian Guilford.
So the weather having the final say in sorting out the winner of the Formula Challenge, and I'm delighted to say that we have Mark Russ with us this afternoon. Mark, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Frustrating time of it, though, the way it all came about in the end.
Yeah, it was a bit of a sort of a bummer with the weather. We had 3 good rounds, but all really dry, and then coming to that last round, we're sort of hoping for a good one. It was pretty close here, but you know, that's racing, and we just sort of we got that qualifying, got the 1 point that we needed to win, and you know, I'm really happy with how it went, so it's all good. Just towards the end there, we saw a couple of spins while you were qualifying. How tricky are those cars to drive? They're pretty tricky. Like the tyres they run on the back, we just, for the wet and the dry, are the same tyre. They're just a slightly grooved slick, so when it's not too bad when it's damp, but then there's a fair bit of floating water, it becomes pretty difficult to try and get around without spinning out, so I was having a bit of a hard time there, as you saw. The championship very quickly became a 3-driver race between yourself and Jono Lester and Damien Asilat. Why was it the 3 of you were so quick to get an advantage? We've been doing it for, you know, sort of through karting and Formula First for me and Jono, and you know, Damien's come from a karting scene as well. It's all sort of pretty relative to what we're doing now, and most of those old guys were sort of just new coming to it and just sort of, you know, getting out there having a go. So I think probably just an experience thing, yeah. You mentioned the older guys. I mean, the 3 of you were much younger. That was surely a factor. Yeah. It's you know, I don't even know if Damien's got his car licence in Australia, so he did really well, and Jono's, you know, he's right up there as well. What sort of times were you doing? We're sort of in the dry. We're sort of getting around in 41, sort of mid 41s. I think the best I've done was a 41.1, which is pretty reasonable for, you know, a small car like that, which is only has a 1300, so it's pretty good. Well, we were talking just before about what they were like to drive. We heard just before how twitchy they are, even in a straight line. Yeah, they're you've got the wings and the slick, so they're reasonably hard to drive. They you know, offer a lot of grip, so it's kind of like jumping back into a go-kart from a Formula First. So it was quite hard to get back into, but once you get into it, you sort of find your rhythm and you're away, so it was good. Interesting point you make about Formula First, because of course you're a Formula First champion. Can you compare the 2 cars? Yeah, well, with the Formula First, you know, you've got a 4-speed manual gearbox, and you use the clutch to go up and down gears, and a lot slower and not so stiffly sprung. And a challenge car, you've got 5 gears, you just push a button, no clutch, you know, up through the gears, and a lot stiffer sprung, and just a lot more sensitive to drive, especially around a Taupo. So you've now won the Formula Challenge. What happens for you now? Well, we're looking at doing the Toyota Racing Series, which starts in November. We've got a car that we can run. We're just, at the moment, looking for a major backing sponsor, which could come on board that we're really interested in, you know, getting involved in. And if they wanted to get in touch with you, how do they go about doing that? Well, you could probably the best way would be talk to my dad, which is Bill Russ Motors, or an email address, which is djruss@extra.co.nz. So it's TRS this coming summer. That's the aim. What about long term for you? Well, with this new A1 Grand Prix coming up, you know, we've got a New Zealand team, which is awesome, and that's something that I really want to strive for. I think it's a great series, and I can't wait till they get started, and maybe they'll get it down here in Hampton Downs, which would be awesome. Let's hope so. All right, yeah. Mark, congratulations on the title. We look forward to seeing how you get on, and I hope our paths cross again. Thanks a lot for having me. Okay. That's Mark Russ, the Formula Challenge